right? Because Denver is has to pick up a little bit of slack. But do you see Jokic getting what would this be? Would this be 4 in 5 years? He already has three. He has three in the past 4 years,
Yes,
right?
three and yeah, yeah,
And
four
Embiid
and
got
5 years.
four,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I mean, he's been balling, like I said, much more than he needed to before on other Denver teams. But you know, I think the last two games he got two triple doubles, right? So the stats are there. I think he's not really leading the league in points because he's averaging about 29 points per game. But he's
Right.
leading. Looks like he's leading the league in rebounds with about 13 and assists with like 11 and a half or 12,
It's
right? So
crazy.
do you build a case around giving Jokic 4 in 5 years? Is that something that you could see the league doing?
I mean, you sold it, right? Like everything you just said, right? He's the man's averaging 30 points, 13. I'll round it up. I think he's averaging like 13.7, so around the 14 rebounds and like
Yeah.
12 assists. Like, so I can't argue that, like, no matter what, if you know ball, like, because everybody seems to like that phrase, but if you know ball, like, you can't, like, there's nobody close to what he's doing right now, right? And it's RJ you're speaking about, right? Like, you know me, I wasn't a big Jokic fan. I'm not saying I don't think he's good. I'm not his biggest whatever. He's not my biggest fan. I'm not his biggest
Hmm.
fan, sorry. Um, but yeah, no, he's definitely MVP right now. I don't see him doing like getting worse at what he's doing because as you said, they lost a lot of role players, so they need to rely on him. But what's actually interesting is that like his usage is not even going up higher than typically what he's done the past few years. Like you would
Hmm.
think because he's averaging more points, more rebounds, and assists, you're like, oh, he's probably has the
Playing more
ball in his
minutes,
hands. He's playing more minutes. He has more like the
taking more
ball's in his
shots.
hand. But no, he's doing Jokic things, and I think he's just elevated his game to where it needs to be in order to keep this team afloat. They're fourth in the West as of today, which is where I had them at preseason. I was like, they could be a fourth seed, top four for sure. But I was looking, leaning towards the fourth seed.
Hmm.
And when it comes to my criteria to be MVP, I think the fourth seed is good enough for
I was just about to
for
ask that.
Jokic, especially. But like we also talk about narrative too, right? Narrative matters as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
he fits right as of today. He fits the criteria for being the MVP if the season were to end today.
Okay. So because there's kind of like two parts that people. Well, the one part obviously the individual stats that everyone acknowledges, but then the one part that most people don't acknowledge, which is the team record or the team standing, right? So you say pretty much if they're fourth or in the upper half of their conference, then that constitute that player getting MVP consideration, right? So
Yeah,
you wouldn't really
for
consider
me.
if it was fifth or sixth.
Right, because remember I told you I
Okay.
think the year that there was sixth place, I wouldn't have given him MVP that year, even though he
Hmm.
had the stats and stuff to back it up. I know a lot of people would disagree with me on that, but yeah, I think record matters because being the most valuable player, it matters when you guys are successful. Like if you're on a
Yeah.
team that's not doing as well and stuff like that, like typically guys can stat pad or sorry pad their stats on bad teams or bad situations. I'm not saying that's what Jokic did before, but if you're winning and it's because of you that you're winning,
Yeah.
that's just I don't know. That's just how I break it down in my mind.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair to say. And given the West as well, like, the teams, I mean, like even last year, three teams were separated by one game for 65 games of the season, right?
It's
So
crazy.
even if they do fall to like fourth or fifth, they're really like 2, 3 games behind the first seed. So does
Fuck.
that really, take them out of the consideration of being the MVP when if
Mm.
that player wasn't on the team, they would be 12? You know what I mean? So
No, it's a good point. No, that's a very good point. Yeah, if they have the stats and there's like a 1-2 game room difference, and you happen to be fifth, and then like the 2 game difference is
six is
the
pushing it.
third.
Six is pushing it. Fifth and sixth is pushing it. I agree with the top. If you're in the top of the conference, then that should be enough, given how tight the West can be some years too,
True.
right? Because it that fourth would be good as first in the East. You're second, behind Boston.
I mean, right now in the West, I think 11th would be good for
Yeah,
third in the
for
East or
third.
third or fourth. Like so, like, so I guess that also matters too, right? I guess because it's
Yeah,
narrative based. So I think, yeah, if you're in the
yeah.
West and you are competing for the MVP trophy, maybe I won't be as hard on you just because the West
Hmm.
is so tough. But in
Yeah.
the East, man, you definitely got to be first. Like you got to be first. You know what I'm trying to say? Jason Tatum
Okay.
wasn't really considered for MVP last year, and they had a historic year last year.
Yeah.
Historic, but I don't know if voters were looking at it like, but you're in the East,
He wasn't
you know?
pulling the team. He was, yeah, and he's in the East. He's playing the
Mm.
Raptors and Detroit, 8 games out of the 82 games. So
Yeah, it's like, Washington Wizards,
fair enough.
like,
Okay, so because right now I would say the top three would be Jokic, Shea, who just dropped like 45 career high last night, and Jason Tatum. You know what I mean? He's been on a tear. He's averaging about 32 or so once
Mhm.
again. And the Boston Celtics are playing great basketball. They're like 10-1 or something like that. So Jokic is in first place. How far back is Tatum and Shea currently for that MVP race? Right, because this is a long year. We're 12, 13, 15 games in. Can they cover? Obviously, they can cover up ground, but like, how much of a lead does Jokic have right now? Like, how much better is Jokic playing than those two to kind of make it so clear that he's number one?
It's not necessarily okay. So he definitely is playing better than them, but I wouldn't measure it that way. I just measure it in the sense of like, okay, what his production with what he has and what they're doing is is elevating them to be this. So Shea, he's doing amazing things as he did last year. He was my MVP last year.
Mm-hmm.
But he does have Chet Holmgren, even though he's injured right now. But he has Chet, Jalen Williams. He has a nice young team with a lot of guys who know what they're doing. They were first in the West last year already.
Mm-hmm.
So and with Jason Tatum, same thing. He's on a historical Boston Celtics team who just won the NBA championship. So I think, like I said, narrative matters when it comes to MVP, and I think Jokic kills it in the narrative as well. A lot of people, again, will say, Chet's an all-star. He's a potential. He's putting up all-star numbers. You know what I'm trying to say? You have Jalen Brown on your team, who was the NBA Finals MVP. You know what I'm trying to say? So like
Yeah.
that's how I look at it. Obviously people have their thing, but I just based on how I see MVPs in the past, it's typically what are you doing and how much more what are you doing to elevate the team to where they are right now, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Okay. Okay. No, fair enough. I mean, if I had to choose, I would go with Jokic right now because
Yeah, facts.
he's really like the dog pulling that sleigh of team, right? Without him, there's really not much momentum as well, right? The
Facts.
stats, but the momentum, what he does, he makes them better, right? So I think that's definitely like a compounding effect that he has. It's just like a hockey assist, It's just like that whatever you bring additionally, the intangibles that you don't really see, right? So I think but I think Tatum is